Singapore's a really small place. So if you've lived here all your life, you may feel that there's nothing left here that can still surprise you. But if you dig a little deeper, you'll quickly find that Singapore still hides many secrets. There are secrets in our shallow seas, and on land, there are secrets in our past. And down shady alleys, there are even secrets in our homes. I'm Jonathan Lim, and on this program, it's my mission to uncover these secrets with you. Welcome to 10 Things You Don't Know About Singapore. Cheers. Here in Singapore, we party a lot, and that involves drinking. One more. Alright. Finish it up. In the whole world, which country imports the most Scotch whiskey?
Say Scotland.
America?
Japan? Maybe US?
You got it right. Well done. Okay, so US is number 1. Who's number 2?
UK?
Germany. Italy.
Nearer. Singapore?
France. Wales.
France. Well done. Okay, now, last question. Would you believe me if I told you that number 3 in the world is Singapore?
No.
My goodness. That means we are like contributing a lot in that thing.
Mainly because of you 4. Singapore is, per capita, the largest importer of Scotch whiskey in the world. Thing is, we don't drink most of it ourselves. If we did, we would have to go through 13 bottles a year, each. It's all because of this, the Port of Singapore. We import all kinds of things, including Scotch, in bulk. And then we simply export it again. The key word, as it often is on this island, is hub. Singapore is a major hub for whiskey distribution in Asia. Nonetheless, whiskey is Singapore's 3rd most popular alcoholic beverage after beer and wine. So the next time you find yourself in Singapore, knocking back a glass of Scotland's finest, remember this. For every glass you drink, there are many more that got away. In fact, there are quite a few things that can't be imported into Singapore at all. Drugs, personal artillery, pet tigers, and 1 or 2 things that we quite like to eat. There's a pretty wide variety of seafood that finds its way onto Singaporean plates. But there are 1 or 2 things that are strictly prohibited, including 1 kind of shellfish. Not these tiny little things. We're talking about the largest shellfish of them all, the giant clam. How giant? These shellfish can grow up to 1 meter across. They used to be pretty common in local waters and in local cuisine, but today they are nowhere to be found. Why? Because we ate them all. Auntie, each one 2 kilo, huh? Thanks. There's nothing marine biologist Dr. Neo Mei Lin likes better than a clam hunt at Sisters Island. If only it wasn't so damn early. Still, I think I may have found something. Mei Lin, I found it! Giant clam!
Oh!
Best clam in the world! But it looks like the clam is not at home.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is actually a dead clam. Yeah, so it's quite sad. So this is actually not really the largest clam.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so this is one of the species that you can find here in Singapore.
Okay.
It's the fluted giant clam. Just, yeah, looking at the projections that you see here.
I see, okay,
Yeah.
Okay, back to the true giant clam, the biggest one that's gone, right? Is it true that it's gone because we gobbled it all up?
Well, Well, one of the main reasons is that we overharvested this particular species, and because they are highly valuable as a source of food to people living along the coastlines. And this true giant clam can grow up to 1 meter long and weigh over 300 kgs. So you can only imagine how much meat it has.
Wow.
And it can actually, so actually one of the interesting records that I've read about is that an individual that size can feed up to 14 different people over 6 weeks long.
Wow, that's quite a party.
Yeah.
So it's true that we'll never ever see this true giant clam ever again.
Well, I might have something to show you about it.
Oh, can you show me now?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay. Oh, and I guess I brought this for nothing?
I guess so.
The National University of Singapore's Tropical Marine Science Institute makes its home on St. John's Island. And they have a section devoted to clams. Whole tanks of them. In fact, a breeding colony. And these are the ones I've come to see.
These are the Tridacnoguygus, the true giant clams.
Oh, wow.
And for now, they are about 5 to 6 years old now. So let me show you one up close.
Wow. Oh, look at that.
Oh. You can see it's not really happy out of water. So what you're looking at just now is the fleshy parts, the fleshy tissues.
Okay.
So, yeah, they do that all the time.
Hello.
Just so that
It's a greeting.
Yes.
It's happy to see me. Okay.
So the fleshy tissues over here is frequently eaten either as raw or they can be cooked with a cuisine type.
Okay.
So apart from the fleshy tissues, the clam actually has another very valuable part which is called the adductor muscle.
Right.
Similar part would be the scallops muscle. But only that in the giant clam, it's a lot bigger. That explains why it's highly valuable as well.
The Chinese will love that.
Yeah, and in fact, the Japanese really love their giant clam. In fact, they breed a particular species and they actually put them on sushi and eat them.
Ooh, raw.
Yeah.
So the Japanese get to eat their raw sushi clams, but in Singapore?
Well, it's actually prohibited from eating.
I see. So all isn't lost for the giant clam. While it might have been eaten to extinction in local waters, it's now a protected species, and it looks like it will be making a comeback. Coming up, I'm jumping into bed and I've been a bad boy. Most people know that Geylang is Singapore's red light district. They know that it's got legal, licensed, tax-paying brothels. They also know that this red light district has some of the best food in the country. But what most people don't know about Geylang is that it has more temples, churches, mosques, religious associations than any other part of Singapore. I am surrounded by Taoist gods and heavenly warriors because this is the Jin Mian Daren Festival, organized by the Jin Dongfu Temple. I'm on a quest to find out why Singapore's red light district has so many religious associations. But before that, it can only help to get a luck blessing from one of the area's temples. Now that I have a luck blessing on my side, it's off to Man San Fu Tak Chi, one of Geylang's oldest temples. I'm meeting someone there who can tell me how this craze for religious associations began. So are these the actual bricks you were talking about that were donated to build the temple?
Oh yes, these bricks were actually made by the coolies themselves.
It turns out that Geylang was part of one of Singapore's earliest industrial estates, which is why many coolie communities sprung up here. Each community came from a different part of China with their own unique traditions. To maintain those traditions, Every community wanted its own temple, no matter how many other temples had already been built.
In the past, for old Chinese temples, what happens is that the people who donated money and the people who built the temple, they'll have a plaque so that later generations can remember their names.
Ah, so these are the names of all the donors.
Yes, that's correct.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. If you look at the top two donors here, these two are actually brick kilns which provided 3,000 pieces of bricks each to the building of the temple. Wow. So the main sponsors are the brick kilns.
Right.
And very interestingly, we have all these names with the character Lo behind.
Okay.
Yeah, and these are actually brothels.
Wow, so I can already count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 brothels here.
There's one down here as well from JB.
Oh, 6 brothels helped to build this temple. Now, in some early Western cultures, there's a very strong relationship between temples and prostitution. Is that the case here?
Well, I'm afraid not. Sorry to disappoint you. Because what happens is that the coolies who were based here, they needed some entertainment, outside of their working lives.
Right.
So they had to go somewhere for their fun.
So these were quite legitimate services being provided, right?
Oh, yes, of course.
Okay. Today, there are at least 120 religious institutions in Geylang. On this small street alone, there's a Buddhist temple, a Tibetan Buddhist temple, and a Taoist temple, all within 100 meters. But not all of these places of worship have been here from the beginning. Some are here because of the abundance of souls to save, and many were relocated here because the government made it convenient. In 1992, Geylang was rezoned as an area for civic and community groups, the first area of its kind in Singapore. So by all means, come on down to Geylang and have a good time. But remember, while you're doing whatever it is you're doing, that this might possibly be the most spiritual place in Singapore. In fact, there seem to be too many Singaporeans staying up doing whatever it is they're doing. Is it any wonder that Singapore is one of the most sleep-deprived cities on Earth? How many hours of sleep do you get every night on average?
6 hours.
6 hours.
6.
6? Yourself?
6.
6.
On average, probably 6 hours, 6 to 7 hours.
Do you consider that enough?
I don't think so.
What is stopping you from getting more hours of sleep?
Family commitments.
Okay, family.
Social life as well. Too many friends. Have to cut down my friends.
Work.
A lot.
Thinking a lot. So your mind is too full for sleep.
Yeah.
I see. Obviously, there are lots of things keeping Singaporeans awake at night. And when we finally do get some sleep, it's not always of the best quality. So it's time for me to get wired up for some sleep science. And in a moment, someone is going to come through that door and tell me something I don't know about Singapore and about sleep.
Good evening, John Boy. How
Hello,
are you
Dr.
today?
Goh. I'm a little bit worried. What am I being wired for?
Well, we want to make sure you are sleeping well. So this sleep study will help us evaluate how well you're actually sleeping.
It seems that a lot of Singaporeans are not getting enough sleep. Is that true?
Yes, that's the observation we get as well, because I think we sleep a lot less today than we did half a century ago. But do you know that children are also sleeping much less today?
Children?
Yes. We've got data in Singapore showing that our infants and toddlers, they sleep later and far less than our Caucasian counterparts do.
So when you say later and less, how much later and how much less?
Well, there's data from Singapore showing that our infants and toddlers go to bed on average about 9:40 in the evening, compared to the Caucasian counterparts that go to bed just past 8 o'clock. So it's about an hour and a half difference.
But babies have no social life, right? So why don't they sleep more?
Well, the parents have got a very active social and working life. And we do know that, children's and even infants' sleep patterns and behaviors are actually very much determined by the parental habits and social activities.
Oh, I see. In other words, parents who sleep late end up with babies who sleep late. The instruments measure my brain waves and also my general activity while I'm asleep. The more I move around, the more broken my sleep. And if I were a baby, less sleep might mean less development.
The day is done, they say good night, and somebody turns off the light. Good night.
Well, luckily I sleep like a baby. A Western one, not a Singaporean one. And my results prove it. Coming up, I go cruising for a bruising from a mysterious martial art and discover the Singaporean way of death.
Bombing again and again. Tokyo was burned out.
Literally destroyed the eastern half of the city. The earthquake hit.
Very big shock to Japanese society.
Putting on the Olympic Games motivated the Japanese.
Everybody was really excited about re-entering the global scene.
Japan has bounced back and bounced back even stronger.
So, how much you want for it? Is this really LeBron James' mouthpiece? That is really, really cool.
I think it's priceless.
This is Vegas. I might hit a jackpot.
Oh, it's going to be fun.
I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, brother.
I would have killed for this thing when I was 16 years old.
What's in the box? We got it!
Goodbye, return merchandise.
And then resell it for a profit. You never know what you're going to get in a box. It makes it exciting.
And it's brand new.
Sometimes you get a box for $200.
And make $5 grand.
Oh, there's a giant rip in it. I'm scared we're gonna be losing money.
We got bamboozled on this thing.
工程是一个抽象的概念，这种新冠的病人明显不一样。We did discuss whether perhaps what we were doing was morally wrong.
Random killing of civilians.
People did it in the name of the emperor.
Is this something you'd sell?
We're always looking for something different, something eccentric. Immediate and unconditional surrender.
I think people just fell in love with him so deep.
So if I said the word Singer Fist to you, what do you think it is?
I would think like a fist pump in the air.
What do you think it is?
Boxing Merlion.
Boxing Merlion, I love that. What do you think?
I think it's a beer brand though. Singer fish.
I think it's a building. Somewhere in Singapore, I look like a fist.
A type of dish.
A type of dish, okay. Singaporeans always thinking about food.
Some kind of Singapore bred martial arts.
They've been refined over centuries. Elegant, poised, and very deadly. Because wherever you go around our continent, you can find a unique way to give someone a really good thumping. Did you know that Singapore also has its own martial art? It's called Xin Jia Quan, or Singer Fist. This homegrown martial art was created back in 1985 in true Singapore style by committee. Grandmasters from 8 different martial arts put their heads, fists, and feet together, and Singer Fist is what they came up with. One of these 8 masters was Sifu Teo Chun Tek, a master of the Northern Chinese fighting style, Pai Zu Quan. 师傅丢，听说新家拳是8个不同的招式合并在一起的，是不是？
对。
哦，是哪一些8个呢？
马来武术、Taekwondo、Karate、少林 North、少林 South、Judo、Aikido 跟印度武术。
哦，那可以谈谈一下新家拳的创办历史吗？
就是1985年，那个时候是新加坡武术教练协会啊，那个时候里面呢。很多派里面在面有，他们也团结精神，就是创办这套拳术出来了，他们就认我做头出来做了，哦，那我就每天去练哦，去练，我就斗这套拳术出来了。
那新家拳开创之后呢？
开创之后，在我们的馆里面呢，我们有教了，其他的馆它都不要教了。
那其他的武馆为什么不要教新家拳呢？
他们的武馆啊，他们自己有自己的拳术。好像他北派有北派的，南派有派，马来西亚也有，柔道也有，他们个人派有。他又练你要做什么？他们练他们自己的，这样就慢慢就没有去了，就是剩下我们呀，这套拳是我发展的，我要教。
虽然不简单，我还是很想学啦，可不可以教我几招？
那边可以跟着教练学。
好，谢谢。
好，过去看。
The trainer is Dominic, and he introduces me to the first of the 8 styles in Singafist, the Malay style known as Silat. At least that seems doable. So, after Silat, what's next?
Okay, next is the Taekwondo and the Karate.
Oh, okay, that looks really tough. Okay. Is there anything easier?
Okay, why not we start with the soft art judo instead?
Yes, soft sounds good.
Go in, grab.
Okay, if that's considered soft, I don't want to know what hard is.
Okay, I'm going to teach you the Aikido part of it.
Okay.
It's called the Aikido is harmony.
Harmony, okay. Okay, I feel the harmony. I feel it. How many people actually know Xin Jia Quan?
Okay, at this moment, this art is dying out, so I think maybe about less than 10 of us can actually do it.
Okay, well, now you have one more.
It beats me how Singafist has never really caught on.
Wow.
I mean, it really beats me. Dominic, is there any style that doesn't involve me on the floor? Everyone on this island will eventually shuffle off this mortal coil. That is something we do know about Singapore. And if you opt for burial, this, the cemetery at Chua Chu Kang, is the only place that will take your body. And what we may not know is that these plots, thousands of them, are not permanent. Yes, they're just rentals, and short-term rentals at that. Since 1998, graves in Singapore may only be leased for 15 years. After that, you're out. But before you end up in your not-so-eternal resting place, what actually happens to your remains after you die in Singapore? This is Sin Ming Drive, also known as Death Alley, because of the many undertakers located here. We're here to find out more about the Singaporean way of death. Whatever your ultimate destination, you'll probably need a coffin to get there in. Anjali May is a funeral director with a wide selection on offer.
This is what we call the casket, where you see that it's four-sided.
Okay.
And then if we move over there, you could see what we predominantly see is a six-sided coffin. So the six-sided are always known as a coffin, and then the four-sided as a casket.
But I noticed this one has many more sides. What's going on here?
Yes, this is what we call a poika. 8-sided.
8-sided,
and,
okay.
As you know, Chinese, we like the number 8. So you can see that there's all motifs on all 8-sided.
Yes, yes.
Even at the top as well.
I see.
And this is very popular with the Chinese community.
Before the burial comes the wake. But you can't just leave a body out in Singapore's tropical climate.
You know, when we transfer the body into our care, I think the first thing we need to do is to do embalming.
Okay.
And what we mean by embalming is the preservation of the body.
Right.
So it is important for us to drain the blood out. Okay, and typically it's usually drained into the sewage.
Right. Okay.
But in Singapore, the unusual thing is that we have to drain the blood into white buckets.
White buckets. Okay, and what happens to the white buckets?
Well, and then it gets collected and thereafter get incinerated.
Okay, that's very interesting. But what's wrong with just flushing it into the sewage?
Well, you know, Singapore, we have this new water concept. So nobody really wants to drink the blood that's coming from a dead body.
In case you're not aware, New Water is Singapore's very innovative way of recycling wastewater into drinkable water. I need you to verify something for me. Is it true that more than 3/4 of Singaporeans prefer cremation over burial?
Yeah, I think it's true because based on the families that we serve and majority are Chinese, over 90% would choose cremation over burial.
But I know that most traditions, right, prefer burials in the past. So how come the trend has shifted to cremation?
Well, because the land that you're given is not going to be a freehold land. It's only 15 years. So that means when the 15 years is up, you will have to exhume the grave and then send for cremation. So frankly, who wants to do it twice?
Makes sense. Singapore, with its increasing population and lack of space, has had to be unsentimental with its cemeteries. So there have been plenty of exhumations, as land has been taken back for the living. But if burial is your only option, don't expect any traditional grave digging. Instead, you'll find yourself under one of these concrete slabs. It's all very Singaporean, designed for maximum efficiency. Since 2007, all new burials go into these concrete boxes. Obviously, they're the same size as older graves. People aren't getting any smaller. But they are much closer together, just 15 centimeters apart. It's all about saving space and saving time getting the bodies in and out. But what happens after your 15 years are up? What happens then to your earthly remains? Well, if you're Christian or Buddhist, you're consigned to cremation. If you're a practicing Jew or Muslim, it's different. These religions prohibit cremation, so you will be reburied. But it's going to be multiple occupancy, I'm afraid. You'll be in a group of 8 or 16 in one of these. So if you think you're too close to your neighbors now, wait till you reach the afterlife. Coming up, what's small, wet, and makes a lot of noise? And Singapore started reclaiming land a lot earlier than you think.
工程是一个抽象的概念，这种新冠的病人明显不一样。We did discuss whether perhaps what we were doing was morally wrong.
Random killing of civilians.
People did it in name of the emperor.
Is this something you'd sell?
We're always looking for something different, something eccentric. Immediate and unconditional surrender.
I think people just fell in love with him so deep.
Skinwalker Ranch, it piques people's interest. Just because the stories sound crazy doesn't mean that there's not something to it. If there is something happening out here that's unusual, I want to find out.
Oh, what is that? What are those white pieces right there?
It looks a lot like bones.
We don't know what we're dealing with, and it's a dangerous place.
We have something active beneath this property.
I can't wait to see what we're going to find.
What's in the box? We got it!
You buy return merchandise
And then resell it for a profit. You never know what you're going to get in a box. It makes it exciting.
And it's brand new.
Sometimes you get a box for 200 bucks.
And make $5 grand.
Oh, there's a giant rip in it. I'm scared we're gonna be losing money.
We got bamboozled on this thing.
Bombing again that day. Tokyo was burned out.
Literally destroyed the eastern half of the city.
The earthquake hit.
Very big shock to Japanese society.
Putting on the Olympic Games motivated the Japanese.
Everybody was really excited about re-entering the global scene.
Japan has bounced back and bounced back even stronger.
This is the life, right? Unwinding on the rolling waves, relaxing in the peace and quiet. Unfortunately, Singapore's waters are among the busiest in the world. What has made Singapore a fantastic place for trade through the centuries, its geographic position, also means that thousands of ships pass through every single day. So it's not exactly restful. But there's something out here that makes a lot more noise than shipping. And we just want to ask the three of you a question.
Can we get a prep of what the question is?
No, be a good Singaporean.
What do you think are the loudest things that can be found in our local waters?
Ships.
Ships?
Waves. Generators.
Good answer. What else?
I have exactly the same idea.
No,
Wow.
no, come on, give
So matching. Okay.
Duck tours.
Duck tour.
animals, I don't know.
Animals? Like what? Like what animals? What animals make so much noise? Dolphin. Okay, interesting.
Sea otters.
Whale.
In our local waters.
Yeah, oh my gosh, you. Crab? No. Lobster? Oyster? Clams?
Would you believe me if I told you one of the loudest things is a shrimp?
Huh? Are you kidding? Hey, I said prawns.
Would you believe me?
No.
Why?
They're too small. What sound do they even make?
Despite all the shipping and industry, Singapore's waters are remarkably rich in marine life. Most of the wildlife manages to keep quiet and mind their own business. But the snapping shrimp lives up to its name, making up for its tiny size with a lot of noise. And if I put this microphone in the water, we can hear them. Yes, it's these little creatures that are making Singapore's waters among the noisiest in the world. I'm here with Dr. Manda Chitre, the head of the Acoustic Research Laboratory at NUS. So tell us, how are the shrimp making this noise?
The snapping shrimp have one large claw. They close this claw very rapidly. It shoots out a jet of bubbles. The bubbles are used to stun the prey which they catch. They also sometimes use the bubbles to fight with each other, so it's an aggressive behavior that the shrimp use. The bubbles collapse, and that's what makes the noise. In fact, it's probably louder than being close to a jet aircraft engine, maybe 20 meters from it, something like that.
Oh, wow, that's very dangerous. But somehow, when we were listening here, it didn't sound that loud. How come?
That's right. Part of the reason, of course, is that you may not be as close to the shrimp, but more importantly, the individual snap is very short in time. It only lasts a few hundred picoseconds.
A picosecond is 1/1,000,000th or 1/1,000,000th of a millionth of a second.
And what that means is that your ear averages over a much longer period of time, so it seems less loud, although the sound pressure level is very high.
So the ear does all the work?
That's right.
Wow, the wonders of human physiology. So tell me, where in our waters can we find these shrimp?
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
So the snapping shrimp love shallow, warm waters. We have shallow waters, we have warm waters. You'll find them everywhere.
And how many shrimp are we talking about?
Millions and millions of them.
Have you met them all? These shrimp are more than just a nuisance. Things like submarines and divers need to communicate underwater. But radio waves don't work underwater, so they use sound waves like dolphins do. And it's really, really hard to use sound waves when millions of shrimp are snapping away. Fortunately, these gadgets could help. Professor Manda and his colleagues are developing an underwater modem system that can filter out the crustacean chatter. If these gadgets work as expected, scientists can hope to map ocean currents and provide underwater GPS, accessible to all via the internet.
We have a whole bunch of these modems deployed around this place. Do you want to come help me recover all of them?
Sure, why not? Sounds like fun. Okay, I grab this. And before we take them all up, I can send one last email to the snapping shrimp. Tell them to keep quiet. Of course, another solution to the whole problem of noisy waters is to fill them all in. Land reclamation defines Singapore. So this is the map of Singapore. Right. Okay, I'm going to ask you to shade for me which areas you think might be reclaimed land.
I think a lot of Singapore is reclaimed land.
Whole stretch of East Coast. Wow, do you work for land reclamation or something? No. Where else? What about in the west area?
This one?
Jurong Island?
This one is one. I think this part also.
Tuas, okay. There's more. Did you know that up to 20% of Singapore is reclaimed? Oh my God. Yeah, so where else? Yeah, actually one of the largest patches is this whole section here. What's it for?
Airport?
Correct, Changi Airport. When do you think the first act of reclamation happened?
I think somewhere in the 60s.
In the 80s? 65?
1980s. Must be the 1960s.
I think 70s.
70s. I'll tell you the answer. 1822.
Huh?
Can you guess which spot Raffles chose for the first act of reclamation?
This area?
This area? It's exactly where you are now.
Oh, I
All right.
Boat Quay was a swamp.
Oh.
Singapore is defined by reclamation. First here at Boat Quay, and later on at Jurong, where reclaimed land houses the country's industry. And most recently at Marina Bay, the home for the ever-expanding new business district. The two quays, Boat Quay and Clarke Quay, represent the original trading port of Singapore, the beginning of the modern Singapore story as we know it. However, they were not always as user-friendly as they are today. Let's meet a man who can tell us all about it, Dr. Julian Davison.
Jonathan, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Jonathan, we tend to think of land reclamation as a phenomenon of the modern era, post-independence. But actually, it goes right back to the very beginning of Singapore and to Stamford Raffles himself.
Oh.
He was the guy who set it all in motion. The year is 1822. He comes back from his official posting in Bencoolen. He hasn't been here for 3 years, and nothing is as he wanted it to be. He left specific instructions in 1819 to Farquhar, the residents, of how the town should be laid out, and he particularly made the point that south of the river there should be a Chinatown. When he gets here, there's hardly anybody there.
And why aren't the Chinese there then when he came back?
Well, there's a very good reason. It was a swamp. So Raffles, being Raffles, immediately he starts setting things in motion. Within a week, he sets up a land allotment committee, and he asks them to look into the feasibility of reclaiming the south bank of the river from the sea. And this was a huge area. It went all the way back to Pearl's Hill.
So all this was swamp, all the way to Pearl's Hill?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So how on earth do you fill in so much swamp? Where does all the soil come from?
Well, it was a very handy thing. There was a little hill, roughly in the vicinity of where Raffles Place is today.
Oh.
So, okay, Raffles and Farquhar, they were still on friendly terms in those days. They employed 300 coolies. There were Indians, Chinese, Malays. And there were some guys chunkling away, demolishing this hill, others breaking up the rocks, and a whole lot more carrying them in wicker baskets on their head. And they were paid a rupiah a day, and it took them about 2 or 3 months. And they filled in the south bank of the river, and this enabled the creation of Chinatown. And that's why we see in the plans, we see a Chulia village, Kampong, and we also see Chulia Street behind me.
Street, yes.
And there's another funny thing about Chulia Street. If you stand there and look towards Raffles Place, you can see that it goes uphill ever so slightly, and that is the legacy of that hill which was demolished by Raffles and bunged into the swamp behind Boat Quay.
The very first hill that was sacrificed.
You can just see it still.
Oh, I think we need to go and just see it.
Okay.
Shall we?
Yeah, let's go.
That's Chulia Street, and obviously something's happening now because we're starting to...
You can feel we're taking off.
Wow!
So, you know, when we get to here and we turn around and look towards the river, we're definitely at an elevation. It's downhill all the way, all of 10 feet, I imagine.
Yeah. So this, Raffles Place MRT, was once the hill.
Yeah, absolutely. And it would probably have been about 50 feet in height, and it was taken down by hand and dumped in the swamp.
There you go. That's something I didn't know about Singapore. Coming up, meet the big boys who owned half of Singapore. And why did it take the government over 30 years to take just one picture?
Bombing again and again. Tokyo was burned out.
Literally destroyed the eastern half of the city.
The earthquake did very big shock to Japanese society.
Putting on the Olympic Games motivated the Japanese.
Everybody was really excited about re-entering the global scene.
Japan has bounced back and bounced back even stronger.
We tend to think that everything in the world is pretty much known. It isn't true. Are there such things as deadly forests?
100 bodies a year are found in that place.
Bizarre creatures.
There has been thousands of sightings of chupacabras.
Haunted houses.
Do you think what's in that house is evil?
The answers are frightening.
The Pepsi challenge was like a bomb going on.
They're all mobilized to support the war effort. Hitler became dependent.
This is just the start of what could be a long pattern of destruction.
Humans didn't do this.
3,
工程是一个抽象的概念。
这种新冠的病人明显不一样。
We did discuss whether perhaps what we were doing was morally wrong.
Random killing of civilians.
People did it in name of the emperor.
Is this something you'd sell?
We're always looking for something different, something eccentric.
Immediate and unconditional surrender.
I think people just fell in love with him so deep.
Singapore was built on immigration. It is a force that continues to shape us even today. But who were the early communities that Stamford Raffles invited to help make this country a success? Let's find out. Hi, can you name 6 of the early races that were here in Stamford Raffles Day?
Chinese.
Chinese?
Malay.
2?
Indian.
British. No, that's not a race.
It's not a race?
No, she's a nationality. You can be Asian and British.
Help him, help him.
No idea.
You're a history student.
Aha! One more.
Indonesians?
Well, they were close by.
Egyptians?
No, not really.
Arab. You're so bad. Japanese.
Arab. Well done. What do you know about the Arabs?
Yeah, merchants.
Okay, and did you know this? In the early 1900s, the Arabs actually owned 50% of the land in Singapore.
Wow.
No. They're rich now, they're rich then.
And this is where the majority of the Arab population of Singapore lived, remembered in the name Arab Street. And their descendants are here to this day.
How did so much of the land end up in the hands of the early Arab families in the first place?
Oh, what a lot of people might not know is that the Arab migration to Singapore, unlike other migrations, they didn't come here looking to make wealth. They actually came here with their wealth. They were already wealthy in places like in Indonesia and Malaysia. They came here to actually invest in the nation, help develop Singapore so they can increase their wealth further.
So tell us a little bit more about the early Arab families and some of the land that they owned.
Well, of course, there's a lot of people who are aware that Al Junaid used to own almost all of Geylang Serai.
Oh.
The arcade is well known that it belongs to Al Kaf.
That's right.
Al Kaf mentioned, of course. Till today, you still see Wisma Al Sagaf in
Right,
Bugis.
okay.
And the Talibs used to own Coleman Street.
Whoa.
A lot of other shop houses in Chinatown, Serangoon Road, and so on. We also own almost the whole of Purvis Street.
Wow.
And we own the Treetop Service Apartments, which is in Orange Grove Road. So this is what's remaining. And before that, there was significantly even more, a lot more.
I have a rumor that I need to try out on you. Is it true that Tan Tock Seng Hospital is built on once Arab-owned land?
I think yes. It's quite well known in the Arab community that Tan Tock Seng Hospital, the land belonged to Al Junaid family. And there's also, they say, Raffles Hotel was actually Al Sagaf land that was leased to Sarkis brothers. And they say St. Andrew's Cathedral is land belonging to the Al Junaids that they donated for a place of worship.
So since those days, what's happened to all that Arab-owned land?
What happened was after World War II, we had rent control. So the Arabs owned most of the properties pre-war. So with rent control, the rent freeze automatically. Overnight, your income froze. Secondly, after that, we had Land Acquisition Act. And a lot of the Arab land was actually acquired under Land Acquisition Act, and the compensation we got was actually very, very small.
Now, that's something I didn't know.
While Arab families might have owned large chunks of Singapore's land, it was the British who were in charge. Until in 1959, Lee Kuan Yew was sworn in as the first Prime Minister of a self-governing Singapore. A historic event, one that marked the birth of a new nation.
Let's check out some photos of that scene. What? There are none?
In fact, all there is an oil painting, now hanging in the Peranakan Museum. And that was only painted in the 1990s.
But why is this the only visual record? And why was it painted so much later?
Dr. Lai Kui Fang was the artist chosen for this momentous task. He was trained in Paris, and his work is represented in America, China, and around the world.
那么你看这些画呢，都是已经超过50年了，它还是 very good。这个是在学校用速度练习，画画的程序很重要。如果你不根据程序，不根据油画的那个西洋油画的落跑啊，那么画了不耐，很快脱落，很快裂，很快那个。所以这个是一个秘诀，油画的秘诀。
Dr. Lai paints in the heroic European style, and a senior civil servant felt that this would be the most appropriate way to fill in the gap in our historical record, an artistic reimagining of the event, even if it was 33 years overdue.
连先生也是文化部常任秘书，他叫我，主题是1959年李光耀第一次宣誓就职的场面。那么当时我有问他。 为什么要画这些呢？他告诉我，因为我们行动党建过这么多年哦，那么33年后啊，我们的没有是一个空白哦，我们的后一代游客来也不知道新加坡是怎么来的，
连照片也没有。
连照片也没有。
No one quite knows why there are no photos. Dr. Lai's theory is that photographers were banned from the event. The then head of City Hall didn't want a photograph showing the British in a position of power, handing over a country they shouldn't have owned in the first place.
根据我们那个时候的情况我们都是反殖民地浪潮很汹涌的年代我们就是要独立，我们要独立，我们要自己当家做主，不要外国人在我旁边他有一种极端的思想
So how do you paint a scene with so many well-known figures when you weren't even there? Dr. Lai did his research. He interviewed the surviving participants, he went through the written records, and he used pictures from the 1963 elections, assuming people wouldn't have changed much in 4 years. Thus, he was able to recreate everyone's seating position, how they held themselves, everything down to the color of the furniture and the placement of the microphone. The commission included 2 paintings of the event and another of the swearing-in of the 1963 government.
李光耀先生他最喜欢的是这张。
In the end, the government decided to buy the 2 paintings of 1959, and Dr. Lai never completed the 1963 one.
Dr. Lai 我想问你很重要的一件事，我现在想买一幅画，如果我叫你把这幅画画完卖给我，应该要多少钱？
初步估计要500万到800万美元。
美元，哎呦，有没有一个友情折扣啊？
没有折扣，可能更高价了。因为画家的作品是一个心血，随着他年龄的增加，他的基数的更近于炉火纯青，艺术价值很高的。
了解，好，那我就现在就开始存钱。So you see. Even the most momentous landmark moment in Singapore's history has its secrets.
And there are many more things you don't know about Singapore. Like, what are these markings on the bricks in Singapore's Botanic Gardens? Did you know that Singapore had a whole island populated by gangsters? And the royal family of Johor was once Singaporean and lived in Telok Blangah. So many things you don't know about Singapore.
You just need to keep an eye out.